He thought she'd never speak up. Her entire family chose the lies, laughed at his pain, and buried the truth deep. But 60 days later, his quiet sister-in-law couldn't carry the weight anymore. What she did next shattered everything: her family, the lies, and his broken heart. If you think you know where this ends, you're wrong. Subscribe now, because this story gets darker and deeper than you could ever imagine. 2 months. That's how long he lasted before his world shifted. She thought he'd crumble, thought the public humiliation would drive him to her doorstep, begging. Instead, he signed the papers and walked away, chin high, shoulders back, finally breathing. Then came the knock, the one that changed everything. But before we get there, subscribe, turn on notifications. This won't be what you expect. The divorce finalized on a Tuesday. Gray sky, gray courthouse steps, gray everything. Yet something inside him lightened. For the first time in years, he made a choice that wasn't scrutinized, twisted, or weaponized against him. The house, suddenly his again, felt less like a prison and more like sanctuary. Those first weeks unfolded in silence. Not the crushing kind, the healing kind. Mornings meant sunlight without dread. Coffee tasted different when no one was waiting to mock his choices. He'd read the paper in peace, take walks where nobody whispered, exist without an audience demanding his failure. It was small. It was everything. The town of Riverside, Michigan, population 8,000, where secrets travel faster than gossip, noticed immediately. Sarah's ex-husband, the broken man, had finally gotten out, but nobody said it kindly. At the grocery store, mothers exchanged glances that said, "There's the fool." At the hardware store, conversations dropped to hisses when he appeared. He learned something crucial. You can't control whispers. You can only control your posture while walking through them. A neighbor, Tom, invited him to a Sunday barbecue without hesitation. No pity, no awkward questions, just burgers, beer, and the kind of laughter that doesn't need explaining. When someone cracked a joke about his new bachelor status, it landed softly, even warmly. He laughed, genuinely, for the first time in months. That laughter was medicine. It reminded him that life existed beyond betrayal's shadow. Still, nights were harder. He'd replay that final argument, the moment she'd smirked at the country club, surrounded by their supposed friends, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "He's not man enough to call me out. Look how he just takes it." The room erupted. Laughter. His humiliation, their entertainment. That image haunted early mornings, but it no longer burned. It had hardened into resolve. He'd chosen himself. She'd never see him crawl. By week 8, he'd severed ties with her circle entirely. Texts from concerned friends, deleted unread. Her attempts to reconcile for closure, ignored. The mutual friends who hedged their bets, gone. He wasn't bitter. He was selective. For the first time, his reactions were his own. Power tasted like silence. The silence was interrupted by a phone call one Thursday evening. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Hi, it's Emma, Sarah's sister." Her voice trembled. "Can we talk? In person? I think you deserve to know some things." He almost said no. He'd learned caution, but something in her voice, a crack, raw honesty, made him agree to coffee the next morning. Emma arrived exactly on time, which surprised him. She was the quiet one, always peripheral at family gatherings, the sister who'd never said much of anything. Today, she looked different, determined, haunted. She sat across from him, fingers wrapped around a warm mug, and before he could speak, words tumbled out. "I watched you destroy you," Emma began, voice steady despite obvious emotion. "At the country club that night, at dinners, at holidays, I watched everyone laugh, and I said nothing. For 2 months I've been living with the weight of that silence, and I can't anymore. You deserve to know that someone saw what was real. Someone knows the truth wasn't that you were weak, it was that she was cruel." He stared, unmoving. Voices in his head screamed this was dangerous, a trap, another manipulation. But her eyes, red-rimmed, honest, broken themselves, told a different story. "Why now?" he asked quietly. She set down her mug with shaking hands. Because I realized something. Staying silent is betrayal too. I grew up in her shadow, always dimmer, always less than. When I saw her do that to you, I broke. But I was too afraid to speak, afraid of becoming her next target, afraid of losing my family. She looked up, eyes glistening. But I've already lost them by not telling the truth, so here I am. Something shifted in his chest. Not romance yet, recognition. Someone had seen, someone had known. Over the next hour, she told him things he never knew, private conversations where Sarah had mocked him viciously, called him names, questioned his intelligence, planned her exit strategy months before he suspected anything. Emma had overheard, had wanted to warn him, had choked on the words instead. Every joke at your expense, I winced. Every time she grabbed your arm in front of others and said something cutting disguised as playfulness, I saw you shrink. I hated myself for letting it happen. He found himself sharing too, the erosion, waking up each morning uncertain if he was a man or a punchline, the paranoia that everyone saw him the way she presented him, the slow death of self that happens when your closest person treats you as entertainment. When they finally left the coffee shop, Emma paused at her car. "I'm not asking for love," she said carefully. "I just needed you to know that I saw you, that one person knows the real story, and I'm sorry I didn't speak sooner." He nodded, unable to speak. She drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot, something unfamiliar blooming in his chest. That night, sleep didn't come. He lay awake, replaying her words, her tears, the honesty that felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. By sunrise, he was sitting on his porch with coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up, and he realized something had shifted. The weight hadn't lifted, it had transformed. Over the next week, she called. Coffee became dinner, dinner became long walks through town. They talked about everything except what mattered most, the unspoken reality between them, heavy as fog, waiting to be named. One evening at a small Italian restaurant, he finally asked the question he'd been circling. "Do you regret any of it? Speaking up, risking your family, choosing me?" Emma set down her fork, took a breath, and met his eyes directly. "Because I realized I've been invisible my whole life, always in her shadow, always less than, until I was standing in front of you, telling you the truth, and I felt seen for the first time. You were looking at me like I mattered, like what I thought, what I felt, what I chose mattered, and I didn't want that to end." The honesty was terrifying and beautiful simultaneously. "I'm not asking for love," she continued. "I'm asking for a chance, to rebuild, to know what it feels like when someone actually picks you, not out of habit, not out of obligation, but because they choose to." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I choose you too," he said simply. "Not with the weight that might come, but I'm choosing this. I'm choosing you." The town found out a month later. Emma's mother running into them at the grocery store, hand in hand, unmistakably together. Her face shifted from surprise to fury. That evening, the family texts flooded in. Betrayal, disloyalty. How could Emma do this to Sarah? The judgment was swift. Emma stood in his apartment reading the messages aloud, and he watched her face hardened with something like peace. "I'm done," she said quietly. "Done pretending. Done carrying their guilt. Done being invisible." She called her mother that night. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. When she hung up, tears streamed down her face, but her shoulders had straightened. "I chose me," she told him, "and by doing that, I chose you too." Sarah's response came via text message, venom carefully arranged in pixels. "You're trash, both of you. I hope you're happy destroying what little dignity you had left." He read it once, then deleted it. Emma was right. Some words didn't deserve space in his life anymore. Over the following months, they built something quiet and real. No dramatic gestures, no grand declarations. Just two broken people learning that silence could be comfortable, that presence mattered more than words, that being chosen, consciously, daily, was the greatest love story possible. They took walks through Riverside's parks, and he noticed something surprising. People smiled. The narrative had shifted. Instead of the fool and the girl who pitied him, people saw two people who found each other. The same town that had whispered cruelty now whispered hope. One evening, sitting on his porch, their porch now, Emma leaned her head on his shoulder and said,
Do you know what I realized? What? I spent my whole life being Sarah's shadow, and I thought death meant I wasn't enough. But being here, with you, making my own choices, speaking my truth, I'm finally enough, and you helped me see that. He kissed the top of her head. You did that, I just watched. But that wasn't quite true. In choosing her, he'd reclaimed himself. In her choosing him, she'd found her voice. Together, they were building a new story, one that didn't belong to Sarah or the town or anyone's judgment. It belonged to them. By month 4 of their relationship, Emma moved in. Her family didn't come to celebrate. Sarah didn't reach out. But one evening, a different kind of person showed up. Emma's younger cousin, someone on the family's periphery, who said quietly, "I'm proud of you, for telling the truth, for choosing yourself." That single affirmation meant more than all the judgment combined.